Surviving the Angel of Death, Chapter 3. Mama grabbed Miriam and me by our hands. We lined up, side by side, on the concrete platform. The smell hit me, a foul odor I had never smelled before. It reminded me of burned chicken feathers. At home, on the farm, after plucking the chickens, we would singe off the last little feathers over a flame to clean it. But here, the stink was overpowering. It was as if you walked through it, around in it. It was everywhere and inescapable. I did not find out right away what the smell really was. This place was confusing and noisy. People were yelling. There were screams, confusion, desperation, barking, orders, crying, crying, crying. The crying of children for parents, the crying of parents for their babies, the crying of people confused and bewildered, the crying of people who saw with certainty that their nightmares had come true. Altogether, the cries resounded, and with the ultimate and most unimaginable pain of human loss, of emotional grief, of mental and physical suffering. I felt disconnected, as though I was watching things happen to someone else. Here and there I glimpsed layers of barbed wire fences, bright Klieg lights, and rows of buildings. The SS guards strode among the groups of people as if searching for something. Suddenly, I felt like I had landed in my body again. I looked around and I felt Miriam's quaking frame next to mine. But where was Papa? And where were my older sisters Edith and Elise? I searched desperately, holding the hands of my mother and my twin. I could not find the rest of my family. After 4 days of such close proximity to my older sisters and Papa, in my bewilderment and confusion, I had lost them. I never saw them again. I tightened my hold on Mama's hand. An SS guard rushed by. He was calling out in German, "Zwillinge! Zwillinge!" Twins, twins. He barreled past us, then stopped short, whirled around, and came back. He stood in front of us. His eyes traveled back and forth from Miriam's face to mine, up and down our matching burgundy dresses. "Are they twins?" he asked Mama. She hesitated. "Is that good?" "Yes," said the guard. "They are twins," replied Mama. Without one word, he grabbed Miriam and me, tearing us away from Mama. We screamed and cried as we were dragged away. We begged him to let us stay with her. The German guard paid no attention to our pleas. He pulled us across the railroad tracks, away from the selection platform. I turned my head and saw my mother, desperate, her arms outstretched toward us, wailing. A soldier grabbed her and threw her in another direction, and my Mama disappeared into the crowd. That was the last time I ever saw my mother. And that is also the last time I remember crying in Auschwitz. My childhood ended that day, that moment. Then everything happened quickly, so quickly. Guards separated people on the selection platform into groups. One group had young men and women, in another, children and older people. Miriam and I held on to each other as we were brought to join a group of 13 sets of twins who had come from our train transport. 26 children, all frightened and confused. A guard brought a mother and her twins to stand with our group. I recognized her. It was Mrs. Sengeri, wife of the storekeeper in Simlu Silvanai, the town near our village. Her twin daughters were 8 years old, and when we shopped at her store, she and Mama liked to talk about the problems of raising twins. She and her girls stayed with our group. Why had the guards let their mother come with them and not ours with us? I did not have time to ponder the question much before things started happening again. After half an hour, an SS guard led us to a big building near the barbed wire fence. As soon as we entered the building, we were ordered to undress. I felt numb again, not part of my own body. This was all a nightmare, right? It would end the second I opened my eyes, and Mama would be there to comfort me, right? But I was not dreaming. All of us were given short haircuts. The barber explained that twins received privileged treatment. While other prisoners had their heads shaved, we were allowed to keep some hair. Luckily, I had learned some German, so I could understand what was being said on a basic level. As I watched our long braids fall to the floor, I did not feel so privileged. We were thirsty, hungry, and exhausted. Our father and sisters had disappeared, and we had been wrenched from our mother, and our problems were very far from over. Next, we took showers. Our clothes had been fumigated with some sort of anti-lice chemical, and were returned to us. Wearing our own clothes was another privilege twins received that other prisoners did not. Miriam and I put on our dresses, but now each had a big red cross painted on the back. I instantly hated that red cross on my dress. Wearing the dress did not feel like a privilege. I knew that, like the yellow star they forced Jews to wear in the ghettos, the Nazis were using that red cross to mark us so that we could not escape. Right then and there, I decided not to do anything the guards asked me to do. I would give them as much trouble as possible. In the processing center, prisoners' arms were being tattooed. We watched as the prisoners went up one after another, were told to hold their arms out, which were then pinned down while the instrument seared numbers into their flesh with acute pain. Not me. I was angry, and I was not going to be a sheep anymore. When my turn came, I struggled and kicked. The SS guard grabbed my arm. The feel of his grip twisting my skin dissolved my resolve. "I want my mama!" I screamed. "Hold still," ordered the guard. I bit his arm. "Bring back my mama!" "We will let you see her tomorrow." I knew he was lying. They had just torn us away from Mama, so why would they reunite us the next day? 4 people had to hold me down while they heated the point of a pen-like gadget over an open flame and dipped it into blue ink. Then they held the hot pen to my flesh and began to burn my number into the outer part of my left arm. A7063. "Stop!" I yelled. "That hurts!" I squirmed and wriggled so much that they could not hold me completely still. Because of my struggling, the numbers on my arm were blurred. Next, they tattooed Miriam. She did not struggle like I had. Her number was A7064. The tattoo on her arm was clear. Our arms felt painful and swollen as we were marched across the camp to our barracks, where we would reside. Along the way, I saw groups of skeleton-like people accompanied by SS guards with huge dogs. The prisoners were returning from work. What kind of work did they do that made them so thin? Were they sick? Did they not get food? Everything around me stank with that horrible, thick, chicken feather smell and looked gray, dark, and lifeless, threatening. I do not remember any grass, trees, or flowers anywhere. Finally, we arrived at our barracks in Camp 2B, the girls' camp in Birkenau, also referred to as Auschwitz II. The building was a barn originally built for horses. It was filthy. The stink inside was worse than the stench outside. There were no windows on the lower part of the walls for light or ventilation, only across the top above our heads, which made it suffocating. A double row of bricks forming a bench ran down the middle of the barracks. At the end stood a 3-hole latrine, another privilege for twins. We did not have to go outside in the big public latrine to go to the bathroom. There were a few hundred twins from ages 2 to 16. We spotted Miss Sangari's daughters there too, but we did not speak to them at that time. That first night, a pair of Hungarian twins who had been there a while showed us the triple-decker bunks. Miriam and I had a bunk on the bottom. When the evening meal arrived, all the other children rushed to the doorway. Dinner consisted of a 2.5-inch slice of dark bread and a brownish fluid that everyone called fake coffee. Miriam and I looked at each other. "We can't eat this," I said to one of the Hungarian twins. "It's all you will get until tomorrow," she said. "You had better eat it." "It's not kosher," I said. At home on the farm, we only had kosher food that had fulfilled the requirements of Jewish dietary law, that Papa blessed before every meal. The twins laughed at us, but it was not a kind laugh, more like a "boy, are you stupid" laugh, and they greedily wolfed down the bread that Miriam and I offered them. "We're glad to have the extra bread," they said, "but the two of you are going to have to learn to eat everything if you want to survive. You cannot be fussy, and you cannot worry about whether or not something is kosher." After the meal, the Hungarian twins and some of the others briefed us. "You are in Birkenau," they told us. "It is part of Auschwitz, but it's 3 kilometers from the main camp. Auschwitz has 1 gas chamber and 1 crematorium." Miriam said, "I don't understand." I asked, "What is a gas chamber? What is a crematorium?" "Follow us. We'll show you." The twins led us to the back of the barracks near the door where the barracks supervisor did not notice us. We looked up at the sky and saw flames rising from chimneys that towered over Birkenau. Smoke covered the whole camp and fine ash filled the air, making it as dusky as the sky after an explosion of volcano. It was that thick. Again, we were hit by that terrible smell. Even though I was afraid to ask, I heard myself saying, "What are they burning so late in the evening?" "People," said a girl. "You don't burn people," I said. "Don't be ridiculous." "The Nazis do. They want to burn all the Jews." Somebody else said, "Did you see how the Nazis divided the people arriving on the trains into 2 groups this morning? They are probably burning in 1 group right now. If the Nazis think you are young and strong enough to work, you are allowed to live. The rest are taken to the gas chambers and gassed to death." I thought of Mama, who was so weak after her long illness. I thought of Papa, clutching his prayer book. I thought of our 2 older sisters. Deep down, I knew, without being told, that they had been pushed into the line that had gone to the gas chamber. Against that feeling, I allowed myself to hope that maybe they were still alive. After all, they were older and smarter than Miriam and me. "We're children," I said. "We can't work, but we're still alive." "For now," replied a twin, "and it's only because we're twins, and they use us in experiments conducted by Dr. Mengele. He'll be here tomorrow, right after roll call." In a quavering voice, I asked, "What experiments?" Leah, a 12-year-old twin, told us to stop worrying and go to bed. All of the children slept in their clothes and shoes, so Miriam and I did too. We lay in our wooden bunk on a straw mattress in our matching dresses. Although I was tired, I could not sleep. Tossing and turning, I noticed something moving on the floor. "There are mice in here!" The scream came out of me without my thinking about it. "Quiet," someone said. "Those are not mice. They are rats. They won't hurt you if you don't have any food in your bed. Now go to sleep." I had seen mice before on our farm, but they were not huge like these rats. These rodents were the size of small cats. I needed to use the latrine, and so did Miriam. In the dark, we put our feet down slowly, carefully, because of the rats. We kicked our shoes back and forth to scare them away. Then we hurried to the end of the barracks. The latrine was about 12 feet square, with dark wooden walls and a cement floor. These latrines were not like latrines today. There were not toilets or even seats. Our latrine floors had holes in them that you had to perch over. They were even worse than the rest of the barracks. Vomit and human feces that had missed the holes of the latrine were everywhere. The smell was hideous. We stepped inside, and I froze. There, on the floor, in the filth, were the dead bodies of 3 naked children. I had never seen a dead person before. There they lay, on that hard, cold, stinking floor. Dead. At precisely that moment, I realized that Miriam and I could die, that we were in a place where that happened. I made a silent pledge to do everything in my power to make sure that Miriam and I did not end up like those dead children. We were going to be stronger, smarter, whatever it took not to end up that way. From that point forward, in my mind, I always visualized Miriam and me walking out of the camp, alive. I never permitted fears or doubts to dominate my thoughts. As soon as they entered my mind, I pushed them out forcefully. From the moment I left the latrine, I concentrated all my being on one thing: how to survive one more day in this horrible place.